Okay. This looks like it might be our crew for the time being, but of course we'll welcome new folks as they join. I'll go ahead and kick things off. So, hi everyone. It is lovely to see so many familiar names and faces in the Zoom room today, as well as lots of new folks that I have not had the pleasure of meeting or working with yet. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Haley McNamara. I am a research associate at WestEd, which is a national education research nonprofit. And I've also worked really closely with the Carnegie Math Pathways for nearly a decade now, currently working to help oversee the CIRCL support package that we're going to be discussing today. As some of you may know, this package recently underwent a little bit of a refresh, a little bit of a facelift, and I helped to sort of instigate and lead that work as well. With me today on the call is my colleague, Lisa Savchek. Lisa, do you mind going ahead and introducing yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Savchak, and I am Director of Engagement and Communications for the Carnegie Math Pathways. I've been with the Carnegie Math Pathways since 2015, and I am, like Haley, excited to see some of our familiar faces and to have new faces here as well to learn about this new package. So welcome to all of you.
In addition to a lot of her communications work, Lisa also helped lead many of the design meetings that took place to help refresh the package with instructors and students. And she's also a mastermind behind a lot of the branding that you're going to see and sort of some of the new infographics that are going to be part of the package. So just kudos to Lisa for that. Okay. And before we jump into the real meat of the presentation, we just kind of want to get grounded in our goals and sort of what we're really hoping to see and provide for students in our classrooms. And it's just a chance for us to all get to know each other a little bit and get chatting. So what we're going to do is called a Zoom waterfall. Some of you may be familiar with this format, some may not. But what I'm going to ask for you to do is to think about the prompt that we have here on the screen and type your response into the chat, but don't hit send yet. I'm going to give everyone about a minute to think about their responses, get them ready in the chat, and then I'll give us a countdown. And when I say go, we're all going to hit enter at the same time. So all our responses will show up in the chat in sort of like a waterfall fashion. Then we'll have an opportunity to sort of see how we're all thinking about things before we jump in. So any questions on what we're about to do or how to do the Zoom waterfall?
I did see a question about responding to just one prompt or all. I think you can respond to any and all of them that speak to you.
Yes, thanks, Lisa. It's a choose your own adventure, any or all, or maybe there's a prompt on here that we didn't give you, but really feels important to you. So yes, don't feel confined by what you see on the screen. Okay, so I'll give everyone another 30 seconds or so to get your responses ready. Okay, a couple more seconds to wrap up your thoughts. Okay, I'm going to give us a countdown and then we're all going to hit enter when I say go. 3, 2, 1, go. Oh, wow, look at that. Okay, cool. So we can take a second, see what everybody wrote, see if you see any themes or surprises popping out. I love, Susan, I love your comment about incorporating moments of celebration and joy in the classroom. Oftentimes not something we think about in school or in math particularly. So I really appreciate that comment. I see a lot of comments about students working together and that the classroom is noisy and loud and active. I see another comment about fun and positivity. I'm loving the joy and lightness that you all are centering in your classrooms. That's awesome. Seeing lots of comments about connection, relationships, getting to know each other beyond just the mathematics, which helps students when they're feeling overwhelmed or persisting through struggles. And students helping one another. So great. Thank you all so much for sharing these responses. These are all beautiful and like I want to be in these classrooms. One thing that I'm noticing in all of these responses is that some of the things that y'all are mentioning are not necessarily strictly related to math. Some of these things are more social, emotional, or cultural, sort of the non-mathy, non-cognitive aspects of learning that we all know as instructors, researchers, and designers really matter for students' experiences, but oftentimes are left out of math curriculum. So the CIRCL support package that we're going to be discussing today was actually designed to help you all in all of those goals and enlivening the kinds of classrooms that you're really aiming for. So I'm super excited to be here with you all today to explore these resources and think about how they can support you all in continuing to do the awesome work that you're doing. So yeah, thank you for sharing your answers and participating in that little exercise with me. For the rest of our session today, we are really going to be focused on, first and foremost, learning about and exploring the CIRCL framework and resources. And then secondly, thinking about how we might use these resources in our classrooms. This particular session is really meant to be an introduction to our refreshed CIRCL package and how best to navigate it and how it could be useful to you in your work. I will say there will be additional webinars hosted this spring that really do a deep dive into the research base and the practices in the CIRCL framework. So this is meant to be an introduction, expect sort of non-closure, and I hope to see you in spring for those webinars, and I'll give you more information about them, how to sign up, etc. at the end of this meeting. I'll also say that there's going to be lots of space for Q&A and discussion during this particular session. So please feel free to share your thoughts. You can come off mute. My colleague Lisa is also going to be managing the chat and responding to and elevating comments as they come through. So if you have any burning thoughts, questions, comments, etc., I encourage you to add them there so we can sort of all learn from your thinking and make sure all your questions get answered. Cool. Okay. All right, now that we've got the nuts and bolts out of the way, what is CIRCL? So CIRCL is a research-based framework and an associated collection of classroom-based practices for creating socially, culturally, and emotionally supportive learning communities. CIRCL builds upon the Productive Persistence Student Support Package, which was originally developed back in 2008 and designed for use alongside the Carnegie Math Pathways, Statway, and Quantway curricula. CIRCL draws on multiple disciplines, including research from social psychology, research on culture and learning, and the learning sciences. The CIRCL framework and all of the associated practices that are in the CIRCL package have been adapted from these bodies of research in close collaboration with actual teachers and instructors to think about how can we take these ideas and principles that we know from research really matter for students' experiences, and how can we apply them in classrooms in ways that are manageable, sustainable, and impactful. And actually, many of the instructors some of the instructors who have helped with those processes are actually on the call with us today. And so to give a little nod and acknowledgement to your contributions, I'm going to ask us to do a little bit of an exercise. So please play along, and I hope this works. So what I'm going to ask y'all to do is either give me a physical hand raise if you're on camera, or you can use the reactions to do a virtual hand raise if you fall into any of the following categories. So I'd like you to raise your hand and keep it up if you or any of your students participated in the CIRCL redesign efforts that happened last spring. And if you're in the participants tab, you should be able to see any little hand raises that pop up. I'd like you to raise your hand and keep it up. Hi, I see you, Jan. I see your raised hand. Hi. I'd like you to raise your hand and keep it up. Don't put it down yet. If you are a CMP faculty mentor, or if you participated in the Starting or Staying Strong faculty work groups. Aaron Altos, I'm looking at you. Cool, I see a hand raised. Fabulous. Raise your hand and keep it up if I have ever observed your class or emailed you asking for feedback on something, or to tell me more about something I heard you did maybe in your class one time. Raise your hand and keep it up if I've ever emailed you asking you to get your students to give me feedback on something. Yeah, Janice, you're just like, keep raising your hand and I ask you for a lot of things. And then finally, raise your hand if you ever taught Statway or Quantway or used any of the productive persistence resources. All right, cool. Seeing some hand raises, both virtually and in person. Oh, hi, Valerie. Hi, Amanda. Hi, Patty. All right, fabulous. So I just want to give a moment to, first of all, let y'all scan through and see who's been involved in this work. But secondly, just give a huge thank you to all of you. You've all been just integral to translating these resources from research to actual practice and making them like usable for everyday teachers and students like yourselves. So just want to say a huge thank you to you all. Okay, everyone can put their hands down. You can go back off camera if you'd like. Thank you for participating. Okay. So as I mentioned, these resources were originally developed as part of the Carnegie Math Pathways program, and you may have heard of them under the name Productive Persistence before. So we know from over 15 years of investigation and research into CMP that classrooms that incorporate supports for all of those sort of non-cognitive, non-mathy factors of learning can actually have a really significant impact on students' experiences. So for instance, we see from our data that promoting and utilizing these supports significantly improves students' confidence as learners and their sense of belonging and that they belong in their math classrooms. It also significantly reduces students' anxiety, which in turn translates to greater student success and persistence in their courses. We also consistently hear from both teachers and students how much these practices really impact their learning. So here on the left, I have a quote from a Quantway instructor that says, "One of the biggest impacts of teaching Quantway has been that it has infected all of my other classes, is that I just can't jump into the content like I used to. It's become very apparent that those underlying skills are what really makes students succeed in the end. The sense of belonging, the sense of being part of a team, and that we're all in this together. It's very important to the success of my other classes now too." And then on the right, I have a quote from a student that says, "The student supports helped me succeed in this and other courses because it reinforced how flexible our minds are. We have the capacity to learn if we work at it, as opposed to messaging just about needing to study more without any context." So again, I'm going to pause here. I've been talking at you a lot, showing a lot of information, and I'm sort of curious to hear from you all about how you support your students in their sort of social, emotional, and cultural well-being. So again, we're going to do a Zoom waterfall. You can go ahead, get your responses ready in the chat now. And I'll give us all about a minute to think about these two prompts here. So what is your favorite way to support your students' social, cultural, and emotional well-being? And that could be related to the productive persistence supports that some of you have used previously, or it could be something that you just do on your own or heard about somewhere else. And then how have you seen these kinds of non-math, non-cognitive practices impact your students? Give us all about another 30 seconds to get our responses ready, and then I'll give us a countdown. Give us about 5 seconds to wrap up your responses. Okay. When I say go, we're going to hit enter. 3, 2, 1, go. All right, fabulous. So we can all take a second to just review these responses. Oh, Jan does the question of the day. Erin, I think I remember back in the day, you used to do that as well, just to help get people chatting, feeling comfortable communicating with each other before they jump into the math. Positive feedback is a huge one, and then also contacting students when they're absent, just so they feel like they belong, their attendance matters and is noticed. Learning students' names is a huge one for helping them feel seen. Hearing a lot about having students work in small groups so they can connect and have like peers and buddies that they're working through. Setting really, really clear expectations. That's a huge one that we see for sure. I like this one too from Patty. I just talk to them, right? It's so simple, but so powerful, you know, and sometimes we're just thinking about the content or getting to the exam, and we can forget those kinds of things. So yeah, I just want a big +1, lots of hearts on that one. Just the impact of just chatting. Oh, and Janice, that you we'll call it borrowed. Your question of the day from Erin. That's awesome. Love to see people learning from each other. Very cool. So I think the big takeaway here is that there are lots and lots of ways to support students outside of the mathematics in feeling really comfortable, capable, and ready to learn in our classrooms. And lots of the things that you guys mentioned are in the CIRCL package. Some of the things you guys mentioned aren't, and we could consider adding them. Just wanted to flag that. Okay, cool. Thank you all again for sharing your thoughts. So as I mentioned, CIRCL, which was formerly referred to as productive persistence, underwent a refresh over the past year. And in part, that refresh was motivated by the CMP materials moving to OER, or Open Educational Resources, which means that these resources that we know have had a great impact within CMP, both from the data and from talking with you all and from talking with your students. We know these practices matter. They've mattered within CMP. And now there's an opportunity to share these practices with a much wider audience. Essentially, anyone on the internet who wants to use these materials is now able to use these materials. So there's a huge, huge opportunity here to have even more impact with these resources than we currently have when they were strictly with the CMP network. So given that we knew lots more people are going to be using this, we really wanted to make sure that these materials were in the best shape possible, and that they were ready to be sort of used flexibly across a variety of contexts. So over the past year, we've engaged in what we're calling a refresh in order to, number one, reflect new and emergent research and researchers. Number two, create more space for these practices to be applied to a wider, more diverse audience. And then number three, really just increase the usability, and just make sure that people are really able to navigate and use these resources sort of efficiently and effectively. And in order to do that, we sort of approached this work in two phases. First, in the fall of 23, so just about a year ago, we recruited a team of expert researchers to help us audit the package and conduct a literature review to bring our framework sort of up to speed with current research. And then the second thing we did in the spring of 24 is we recruited a team of both instructors and students from TCUs, or tribal colleges and universities across the United States, to help us with some co-design efforts, thinking about, of these practices, given what we know from the research, sort of what are we actually going to update and what would this look like in real classrooms? And as a result, we have the refreshed CIRCL framework, which I have here on screen. It looks similar, or it is similar to the productive persistence framework, the original framework, in many ways, but it has a new name. We're now calling it CIRCL, and a new additional driver, which is affirming emotions. So I'm just going to go around the horn here to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of sort of like what these drivers mean in the framework. So the first one is building community, which is here on sort of the top left in yellow. And building community essentially means that caring classroom relationships foster a student's sense of belonging and create avenues for instructors to better understand their students' identities, motivations, learning assets, and growth areas. So that's sort of building community, really getting to know your students well and allowing time for your students to get to know each other well. The second driver in the framework, making our way around up in the top right in orange, is promoting relevance, which essentially means that centering students' cultures, lived experiences, values, and goals can boost engagement, understanding, confidence, retention, and problem-solving skills. So really helping students see how what they're learning in class is relevant to their immediate daily lives, to their sort of long-term lives, the kinds of persons that the kind of people they want to be, the kinds of contributions they want to make to society, and also to their culture, their community. So really thinking about how we can connect math to those things. Our third driver on the left in the middle in pink is embracing growth. which was formerly called growth mindset. And this driver is all about normalizing struggle as a sort of normal everyday sign of learning. And doing so acknowledges students as whole people, that you're not expected to come here and be a perfect mathematician off the start. Math is inherently a human endeavor. And by acknowledging people as whole people, it provides instructors with a valuable window into student thinking and can therefore boost student achievement and persistence. Our fourth driver is on the right in purple, affirming emotions, which is our newest driver, which is defined as emotions and learning are sort of inextricably linked if we look at the research, and supporting students in identifying, managing, and harnessing the power of their emotions, both positive and negative emotions, creates a safe space for them to be their authentic selves and really embrace learning challenges sort of wholeheartedly, particularly when things get sticky or a little bit challenging. Our next driver here is on the bottom left in blue, strengthening know-how. This is all about supporting students' ability to navigate educational systems and processes and employ effective research-backed learning strategies that can therefore promote agency and reduce disparities in sort of learning know-how, understanding how college works, particularly for first-generation students. And then our last one on the bottom right is sort of tying it all together. CIRCL practices are most effective when there's coherence between students' experiences in the classroom and then the policies, practices, and norms of the wider school and district environment. So really trying to create alignment between what students are experiencing, all those great opportunities they get in your classes, and sort of what they experience when they go out into the rest of the school. And then the last thing I'll say is just please note all of Lisa's beautiful branding on this particular slide. And just again, thanks to Lisa for that. Okay, cool. So that's the updated framework. It should feel relatively familiar, but maybe with some new framing, some new research included. And I know that was a lot of information. Up next, I'm going to give us just a quick tour of the package, and then you'll be able to dive into the package yourself, read more about each of these drivers, and see some of the related practices. So with that, I'm going to switch us over to this screen, which probably looks really small. It's okay if you can't really read anything. I'm just going to give you an overview of some of the key features of the new package. And then you'll get a link to it and you can go and sort of read and make it as big as you'd like on your own screen. So just bear with me for a second, even though it's a little bit small. So what you'll see when you open our new CIRCL package is that we've redesigned the sort of intro pages here. So there's some more intro text and context about sort of what CIRCL is, how you might use the package. And then we include the actual framework here up front, and this link right above the framework. This will take you to a document that has more detailed descriptions of each driver. So I really encourage you when you get a chance and you get in here to check that out and read those definitions more closely. Scrolling down to our second page of the package, we provide some guidance for how to navigate the CIRCL package, and we list to our table of contents, which I'll walk you through in just a second. So I'll put pause on that one. And then right below that is a section that's all about sort of how we encourage local adaptations, and we provide examples within each practice in the CIRCL package of how these practices have looked different across different classroom contexts. The idea is to help give you some inspiration for how you might adapt these for your particular classroom, and just giving you permission that this is not one size fits all. We understand that your students have specific needs, and your context might look different than somebody else's. So this is really just giving you permission to make adaptations and tweaks to these practices as needed. So continuing to scroll down, we'll see the table of contents, which has a few key features as well. So first, we've divided the table of contents into activities, so things that you'll do one time, sort of mainly one time, although you might draw on tenets and ideas from that activity throughout your course. And then routines. So these are things that you might do regularly. So every course, every other course. So we've divided it up into those two categories to hopefully help make things easier to navigate. Each practice is hyperlinked to the actual practice materials. So you'll see that in the title. Next to the title, we've tagged each practice by the drivers that it is intended to promote, and we've color-coded to hopefully help make it easy for you to think about, I'm really trying to promote belonging in my course. What's the practice that I need to use? And then below that, we give a little bit of a description of each activity, so you don't have to just know what it means from the title. You can actually kind of scan through these at a glance and decide sort of what might be right for you or what are you interested in learning and hearing more about. And then finally, the last thing I'll show you is what the actual routines and resources look like. So we created a really standard template. So every resource will follow the same basic headers and categories to hopefully help it make it easier for you all to find the information that you're looking for. And then all particular activity materials have been hyperlinked, so they're saved in a different folder. To make it easier for you to go make a copy of that particular resource, you can edit it and update it, make changes to it to make it work better for you and your students, and then either print or share digital copies with your students. One other thing that you'll probably notice as you're going through and looking at specific activities is that we also worked with researchers, instructors, and students to think about what would these activities look like, both in the in-person and the virtual context. The package previously skewed much more towards in-person implementation, but we know, particularly post-COVID, that virtual classes are much more common. So that's just another thing that you'll see as you're scanning through these particular resources. Okay, cool. I think that's it around nuts and bolts of sort of major structural changes we've made to the package. So without further ado, we finally get to take a peek at it ourselves. So I've included the link here in the slide, and I'm also going to pop it in the chat for us so you can navigate your way to the package. So what I'd like everyone to do is go ahead, pull up the package, and make sure you can do that. Let me know if you have any questions about how to like access it or navigate it. And once we see everyone kind of popping up and in the package, seeing lots of people joining, cool, cool. We're gonna go ahead and make a series of breakout rooms. And in your breakout rooms, what we'd like you to do is, as a group, select maybe 1 or 2 practices if you have time that you want to explore more in depth. And then think about what would this practice look like in your particular class. Well, first of all, navigate to that practice, make sure you understand how the package works. Secondly, what would this practice look like in your classroom? Would you need to make any changes to really make it work for you, for your students, for your context? How do you think your students would respond to this practice? What do you think the impact would be? And then do you have any questions, wonderings, or noticings? After time in your breakout, we're going to come back together as a whole group. We'll do like a little bit of a share out just to see what everyone talked about. And then we'll also have just like a good chunk of time for Q&A. If there are any sort of pressing questions, noticing, wonderings that y'all want to share, that'll be the time. Any questions before we go into our breakouts? I'll be floating among them too, so I'll pop in and see if you guys have questions as you're chatting. Okay, cool. Oh, okay, cool. So it looks like we all should have gotten our prompt now. So go ahead, join your breakout, and I will see you in there.
All right, we'll wait for everybody to make it their way back in here.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Nice to see all your faces. Okay, I hope you had a chance to explore the package a little bit more, see like what's really in there, sort of the nuts and bolts. I'm curious if I could get like one or two folks to share kind of what your group talked about. Just a high level summary, which practice did you focus on? Any cool adaptations you thought about?
I can start off.
Sure.
This is Aaron, and Valerie and I were talking. I guess we sort of worked back, or we did our own discovery learning. I guess we'll put it that way. So we talked about what kind of pressing issues we are having, and then sort of located or identified like a contract activity or some sort of like community agreement or pact, perhaps, would be an activity that would address this issue of just kind of poor attendance and poor engagement, and students just, us as instructors, just kind of feeling like students maybe aren't really grasping how much they miss when they miss a class, and what are the things that we can do as instructors that help them maintain a connection to class when they have very legitimate reasons to miss, but then at the same time don't make it easy for them to be isolated, and continue to, not be engaged.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. That's a great summary. Yeah, our group was also identifying some of the overlaps between some of these drivers in the framework and how learning strategies, like how you show up to class, when you show up to class, what you do when you miss class, is very much related to belonging, and that these two drivers can sort of reinforce one another. So that was another sort of piece I thought was really interesting about that conversation. Anybody else want to share what your group talked about? I'll also open up the floor for any questions, any wonderings about the package that you'd like to get answered.
Yes, I could speak up. It's hard to get a set of notes like this and have a reaction so quickly.
Mm.
I thought a lot of the activities I'd want to think about, and just how would I put it in my class. But I do think that I would do some of these in my classes, just to remind them that it's not all about add, subtract, multiply, and divide. But why are we doing this? But I would need more time to think about it.
Oh, totally. I really appreciate that point too. And really driving home what I said at the start, that these are not intended to be one size fits all practices.
Yeah.
And that we know your students are different, you're different, your context is different. And really putting in that like thoughtful work to say, here's this idea from research. What is it going to look like? How can I make it work best? Really does take time. So I really appreciate you taking that opportunity to just be like, I need a minute. That's cool. I like that. Susan, I see a hand raised.
Yeah, well, the one that we discussed was learning strategy discussions.
Oh, cool.
Primarily. But one question that I asked during our discussion is that I had tried some activities related to this one that were flops. And what I asked was, as I tried to envision how this activity as written, and like Patty, I couldn't fully absorb it, but I said, okay, what if I tried something like, something along these lines in my classroom, how would it go? And I saw enough echoes of the ones that were flops that I said, okay, I wonder whether these prompts, how did they go when they were used? Are these tested? And Mary said, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure these have been used several times. And that's why they look the way they do. And I thought, okay, as you were talking just now, I was thinking, I wonder, how sometimes when you're in an education class, I don't know how many of you took education class, but in education class, sometimes you can see, here's how a classroom activity, you can see how the students responded, because they videoed it. And I thought, I wonder whether those kind of videos are out there, because this was part of a study. So I'm just going to throw that out there.
I love where your head is going, Susan, because a next round of work that we're really interested in doing for this package is collecting actual artifacts from classrooms, like videos, like literal like student responses and things like that, and adding them in to the package. They're not currently in there, but I fully agree that that would be like a huge asset and a benefit. I think you had a few questions in there too. So yes, the prompts that are included, all of the text, all of the prompts that are in this package, anything that we say, show this to students, ask this to students, has been reviewed by instructors and tested with students. So that is right. Mary was right on that. Thank you, Mary. So that's correct. That being said, students are all different. And so we encourage you, if you try this in your classroom and it does not work for you, we encourage you to think about ways to make it better, or to email us and say, hey, this prompt didn't work. Like, what could we try instead? And we're happy to work with you on sort of thinking about adaptations. And then at the same time, documenting what you do so other people can learn from it and say, hey, I have this kind of a class. These prompts didn't work. I use these ones instead. So that's the kind of stuff we're really excited to share with other people. Yeah, go ahead.
I think one thing that I said about these prompts was, it invites the students to say, what strategies for studying math have been the most effective for you? I don't know that my students always know.
Right.
And so that was something that I said,
yeah,
yes, that might be a useful thing for them to reflect on, but I'm not sure that it would be as effective as if they had some idea of what is an effective study strategy, right? Just saying, what have you done that has worked? They don't always know.
Yeah. I think two things on that. I think it's meant to be, the discussions are meant to be repeated. So over time, like, yeah, when you do this the first time, students might be like, I don't know, I read my notes. But then over time, when you're doing this often, they might develop the ability to really like think about their own learning, think about their own strategy use, and be a little bit more critical in their responses. So that's one thing. Second thing is, we do provide a list in that activity of sort of research-based learning strategies. So you could try and flip it. So instead of asking them what they do first, you could say, this is what we know from research works really well. Like, do you do any of these? What else do you do? So you could flip it around and see if that gets you better responses too. Particularly earlier on, like the first time you do this, showing them what's research-based first might be helpful. The reason why it's laid out the way it is because we want to acknowledge that students usually know some stuff about their learning, and they just need the space to really think about that. And we want to like privilege their experiences and how they think about their learning over research when it's appropriate. We don't want to say like research is better than what you think, throw what you think out the window because this is what research says. So I think that's part of why it was organized the way it is, but we invite you to try something else. Fabulous. So in the sake of time, I'm going to move us along and wrap us up here. Oh, thank you. Okay, just making sure I didn't have any pressing comments in the chat that I need to respond to. Okay, Cool. So as I mentioned, this was like an initial conversation, and we're going to be hosting a series of 3 webinars this coming spring, where we're going to dive really deeply into a couple drivers for each webinar. So you're going to get to really think deeply about the research base, think deeply about these practices, and start to do a little bit of that co-design work that Patty was mentioning takes a lot of like thought and care. So that's what these will be about. This QR code, I believe, takes you to our event page where you can register. Is that right, Lisa? I'm looking at you. Looks like that's
Yes, and I'm also just going to put it in the chat here.
cool.
Good there.
And then next steps for y'all. So you can continue to explore this package using the link that I shared with you or via the CMP website. So we have the link listed here. Make sure you sign up for those webinars in the spring. I hope to see you all there. And then if you have any questions that come up for you that I didn't already answer, please feel free to email me. I'm always happy to hear from y'all, and I could literally talk about this all day. So please email me. Questions, also suggestions. So if you see a routine, you're like, I do this, or I would do it this way. Like, I love to hear that kind of stuff. So please feel free to share. And I think that's it. I just want to say thank you to you all for your engagement today. I hope this was helpful. And I look forward to sort of hearing how you all end up using these resources.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, bye everyone. Have a fabulous rest of your day. Have a fabulous weekend.
Thank you.
Fabulous holiday.
Thank you.
All the things.